All right, so good morning, everybody. Oh, geez, it all caught frog in my throat. That's a first. My name is Jesse, and I am with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. If you are joining us for the first time, we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. Very foreboding that. Today, this is our second of 5 broadcasts today. We are doing an epic 5 broadcast day, which is why coffee is so very necessary. And all May long, we are featuring and showcasing biodiversity. So we are doing over 40 programs throughout the month. We are doing our Backyard Bio Global Nature campaign, getting you guys out exploring local wildlife near you. And in just a little over a week and a bit, we are doing our Global Biodiversity Festival, the largest conservation program in the history of man, with over 150 programs in 3 days, all in support of amazing conservation organizations around the world. So do check out those websites. There's some really amazing stuff going on, and I hope your classes or families can register soon. Today, we are going back to one of our favorite partners, one of our longest standing organizations that we love to showcase stories from, and that is the Vancouver Aquarium, part of OceanWise, the Canadian international amazing ocean education group that does such incredible work to highlight some of the threats facing the oceans and some of the ways that we can work as a society to help combat those threats. Today, we are going to learn about some of the most iconic and incredible animals off of British Columbia's coast, these southern resident killer whales. So we're going to learn a little bit about them, how they research them, what's going on with their conservation, and so much more. And so I'm going to turn it over to Daphne, joining us live at OceanWise to explain a little bit about these incredible creatures. So Daphne, thank you so much for joining us, and take us away.
Well, thanks so much for having me today, Jesse. Like Jesse said, my name is Daphne, and I'm one of our educators here with OceanWise. If you haven't heard of OceanWise before, we're a global not-for-profit organization whose mission is to have a world in which our oceans are healthy and flourishing. So that's what we imagine our planet to be like, and we're looking for ways in which we can do research to learn more about animals and their habitats so we can help, as well as educate others on how they can help, and then also give you tools or different ways that you can help really easily, where you are in your community, or help the world as a whole. And I want to talk a little bit about where I am today real quick. That is, if Jesse can share my screen, you'll see I am in Vancouver, British Columbia today. You might have noticed I am actually inside the Vancouver Aquarium. So it's a cool space to be programming from today. Although I may not have some killer whales behind me, those are going to be out in the waters off the coast of British Columbia. But I am on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Peoples. And I'm really, really grateful that I get to program and talk to you and live and learn and play on their land and help us learn more about how we can protect the natural world around us so that we can get things back from the planet. And you know what? I want to talk about a really cool type of animal today. So you might be seeing here, we have our killer whales. Now, there are many different killer whales we might see along the coast, along with other whales as well. But my big question to you is, these animals are the largest of something on the planet. I'll let you just think about it real quick. You can share in the chat if you'd like. They are the largest, not whale, but dolphin. So they are actually technically a dolphin, and we'll get into some things later about how much they love to make noise, chat, and hunt for food using sound as well. But it's not just killer whales we see along the coast. We see many different whales, dolphins, and porpoises. And those 3 types of animals together are what we like to call cetaceans. So you might hear that word a little bit more today, cetacean. It's just whales, dolphins, and porpoises grouped together. But you know what? It can be sort of hard to figure out who you're looking at sometimes off the coast of British Columbia. So if you look at the bottom of the screen, you'll see 3 different whales. We've got number 1 is a minke whale. Number 2 is actually a Pacific white-sided dolphin. And then number 3 is, lo and behold, a killer whale. Now, you may also be familiar with calling killer whales orcas. That's going to come from their species name. But can you identify the top 3? Who matches with who? Each of these dorsal fins and tops of the body matches one of these whales. Let's see if you can figure it out.
And if folks on YouTube want to type in the chat bar, you're welcome to do so to play along. Or if you are a live group and you want to type in the StreamYard chat bar, you can. If you share answers there, I will relay them to Daphne.
So I'll give us another maybe 10 seconds. You can try and figure out who matches who. Does A match? Oh, is that a minke? Is that a Pacific white-sided dolphin? Or would that be an orca?
Orca seems to be our biggest vote so far. Yep, orca, we got an
awesome. That's right. We've got that orca whale right there with that large dorsal fin and a little bit of a saddle patch sticking out. You can see it better on this one there. We'll talk about those in a bit. And then B is going to be a Pacific white-sided dolphin. A little bit smaller, probably similar size or a little bit smaller than a human. And then C means that we've got a minke whale. So lots of diversity along the coast here. There you can see who matches who. But we're going to focus a little bit more on those killer whales today. And they're a really, really special animal that we see. They love to play just like we do, and they're super, super smart. We might even see them do some behaviors like slapping with their tails or their pectoral fins. We might even see them do something called a spy hop. I think you can see it here. Let's see if we can get this to play again. Oh, maybe not. Let's see if it'll work this time. Oh, maybe not. Okay, well, we'll watch it one more time all the way through, and you'll see in the far right, you might see someone poke their head up to see what's going on. That's something that we call a spy hop. Taking a lay of the land. There you go. You can see somebody sticking their head up. So lots of fun behaviors, and these are very social animals, just like we humans are, and many other animals like apes and even some birds. So super, super special to see them along the coast. But you know what? There's lots of different types of killer whales that we'll see around British Columbia. The ones we're going to be focusing on today are the residents. These are whales that like to stick closer to shore. And we see two different groups, but within the northern and southern resident killer whales, we'll see them through that yellow area. That's their kind of distribution or the range we'll see them. The southern residents, of course, are more in the southern area. Northerns, more the northern tip of Vancouver Island up towards Haida Gwaii and Alaska. So we do sometimes see southern residents up towards Haida Gwaii, and we have seen them down California a bit, not as commonly as actually right around Washington and British Columbia, right in the Salish Sea. But these animals like to hang out right around Vancouver, Vancouver Island, the Gulf Islands, and the San Juan Islands. But they like to eat some food there. What food do you think killer whales like to eat? Let's see. What food are killer whales eating, everyone? What do you think?
Again, folks, if you want to share in the chat, please do. We've got groups in California, Michigan, and more. Welcome in, guys. And alongside our live groups in Wisconsin, we've got seal sharks coming into the chat. People think no one hippos yet. I don't know. Small marine animals.
Well, you know what? Hippos are on there, but they are actually, out of these four animals, whales are actually most closely related to hippos out of these four. You might not think of that, but they're actually pretty similar. But in the case of food, yes, we'll get some killer whales eating seals or sea lions. Some will eat sharks as well. And actually, the ones that we're going to talk about today, those residents, especially those southern residents, love salmon, especially Chinook salmon. So we will see those residents eating the Chinook salmon. Makes up about 80% of their diet, especially through the summer when we're getting those salmon runs. So maybe you live in an area where you've seen salmon swimming upstream to go lay their eggs and spawn. But we have other groups of killer whales as well. We also have our bigs or our transient killer whales that are going to be a little bit farther offshore. They'll visit us during the season, but they're bigger travelers. And they're going to eat lots of seals and sea lions. Then you've got your offshores. They're going to be farther off. We don't see them as commonly, and they'll actually eat sharks along the coast with that shark skin actually kind of wearing down their teeth. So sometimes they'll have more rounded rather than sharp teeth. But to take a closer look at the health of these animals or what they're eating, what they're doing on a daily basis, we need some help from technology. We can watch them from boats, but it's really cool to watch them from the air. And we're actually having researchers at OceanWise, in partnership with other organizations like NOAA, fly above the whales and take pictures. Now, you need to figure out who is who. So from above, from a boat, we can actually tell which whale is which to see how their health is doing. So we like to look at saddle patches of killer whales, kind of like looking at your fingers and looking at your fingerprint. So take a look at your thumb or your pointer finger. Maybe you can see some patterns on there. Yours are different than anyone else's. Same with these saddle patches, those that kind of lighter color right behind their dorsal fin. So I have 3 different pictures of saddle patches down at the bottom. We've got A, B, C. Can you figure out which one goes with the whales? So we've got 4 whales, so we don't have the saddle patch of one of them there. Who matches who? See if you can figure it out. It's a bit of a mystery.
Dun, 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 dun. Oh, we got a few people in the private chat. A3 we've got. Nice. I like that. Any others? Yep, 3A. We've got 1C and 2B. 2B or not 2B? That is the question.
You know what? You're all doing a great job. And you know what? That is how it is. We've got actually A is going to be with 3. B, definitely with 2. And then we've got C all the way over here with 1. So we've got all these different orcas coming in here. You can see how that works here. It's pretty cool. It's a really cool way to see who is who and to actually track each of these animals, as well as it can help us learn more about who is who. So we not only get to see pictures with these remote control helicopters, but actually we can take samples of things like their boogers. So the mucus that they have in their nose, if you imagine the blowhole of a killer whale right on the top of their head, they're going to take a big deep breath out, spraying some mucus from their body and maybe a little bit of water that was on top of their head. So it's like their nose. They're not actually spewing tons of water. It's just a little bit of wet. And as those boogers get spewed up into the air, we can actually have our remote control little helicopter collect some of that. We can actually learn about each of the whales through their boogers. So if you think boogers are cool and you think whales are cool, you could actually be a whale booger scientist when you grow up. I think that sounds like a pretty cool job. And this is some of the pictures that we might see as we're researching these animals. So here's a beautiful killer whale hunting for one of those Chinook salmon. Pretty amazing to see up close. But I want to share a little bit more from one of our researchers here at OceanWise. And we're going to hear a bit about the southern resident killer whales from Lance.
Killer whales, of course, are in that category of social animals. And those kinds of animals are easier for us to relate to as humans, too, because they do so many of the same things we do. They have friends. Mothers and calves stay together long beyond the period of absolute dependence. They share food. We share food. We have this population of interesting, charismatic animals off our doorstep, and they're suffering, and we, societally, I think, feel compelled to do something about it. The southern residents are an endangered population of killer whales that spend most of their time in southern BC and northern Washington. So they live right in an area of high human population. What makes them different is that the vast majority of their diet is Chinook salmon. The study that I've been working on with my colleagues is we're looking at how they get thin and fat and how that's in relation to salmon abundance. So are they surviving better when there's more salmon or not? We're taking pictures from above. We see the shape of the whales very clearly that way. And what we've learned in the last few years is that their width, which is an indication of how fat they are generally, can change a lot, even in the course of a few weeks. A lot of salmon around, they get fatter. Not much salmon, they get thinner. It's not rocket science. So a lot of people ask, I mean, if there's not enough salmon, for goodness sake, why don't they just turn around and eat something else? Eating unfamiliar food's risky. Some fish have spines that can injure the whale's intestinal systems or have parasites that can infect them. So the safest thing for a killer whale calf to do is to be conservative and learn its food preferences from its mom, and that's what they do.
Awesome. So Lance got to help us out a little bit with sharing some of the cool, amazing things about these southern resident killer whales, as well as some of the things that might be a threat to them. One big thing is that for a long time, these whales were not considered to be endangered because killer whales, we find them all over the world. And a lot of those populations are going strong. There's lots of them. But the southern residents are unique from others. The northern residents, unique from others. They have different dialects, they have different calls, they have different families that they stick together with. And we have 3 pods that make up the southern resident killer whales. And once they were recognized as a separate group, then they could actually be declared as endangered. So both in the United States and in Canada, where we see these killer whales, the southern residents are declared endangered as of a couple years ago. So they are on our special watch list. And one of the big things is, as you can see, this is actually representing every single one of them. There's not a lot. There was a whole bunch of them that were actually taken in the 70s and in the 60s and 70s. And from that, they haven't really recovered all that much. The population has been under 100 for most of the last 30, 40 years. Today, we have 34, I believe. And you can see how many we have in each pod. So each of these is a group that sticks together, and they are actually led by the oldest lady. So that's right, ladies. The mama is in charge. She is going to lead those groups, like Lance said, and she's the one that teaches everyone else how to get food, resources, and how to survive. But there's also some things that are causing issues for these whales. Like Lance said, they live really close to lots of busy areas where lots of humans live. And that brings with it lots of pollution or contaminants that can get into the water and get into their food. As well, we're actually seeing a bit of a big decrease in a lot of the salmon species along the coast, especially Chinook salmon that is so important for these picky eaters. Another one that's a little bit newer is noise pollution. Who would have thought that it's not a physical pollution like maybe some oil, but also sound? So having boats and activity, lots of ships bringing goods from across the world, that's loud. And you know what? These killer whales, these dolphins, they use sound to help them find where they're going, where their food is, and even to communicate a bit. Does anyone know what we call using sound to help you see? So bats and dolphins like to use this. You actually make sounds like clicks, and that bounces off of something, kind of like throwing a ball at a wall. It bounces back, and they'll listen to that sound to create a picture in their head. What would we call that? Any ideas in the chat?
We have one. I want to see if other people get it too. Let's see. Yeah, we've got 2 people in our live chat. Anyone on YouTube want to chime in with that one? Let's see. Dun, dun, dun. So we've got our 2. I'll leave it with that. Echolocation are our 2 guesses from our live groups. What do you think, Daphne?
Definitely, yes. So this is what we call echolocation. And by using sound, they can actually create a bit of like a mental image in their head of what's around them. Even you could do this as well. If you can play around maybe with some friends or family at home, but you can actually put something, have somebody put like a bowl in front of your face and move it. And if you make clicks or talk, you might actually be able to tell where that bowl is even without seeing it. It's pretty amazing. Now, the big thing is, can we actually hear those sounds, or are these sounds going to be too loud for these whales? So I have 4 sounds for us. Let's see if you can figure out if it's made by whales or dolphins, if it's from humans, so noises that we create, or maybe a mix of both. So share in the chat. I'm going to share the first one. Jesse, let me know if this is too loud.
That's perfect.
All right, do we have any guesses in the chat?
Yeah, we've gotten orca and dolphin so far, whales of some kind. I like it.
Yeah, do we think there's any human noises in there?
No one's saying. We got cat. Maybe.
Oh, it does.
Maybe a cat. We don't know. It's very exciting.
You know what? It's a bit of a combination. There were some dolphins in there, but you might have heard some kind of louder thumps. That was actually ice cracking under the weight of some ski-doos or some snowmobiles. So we've got some snowmobiles also on the ice creating sound for the animals beneath. All right, let's see the next one. Let's see if you can figure it out. Let me know if it's too loud again. All right, oh, I gave it away. All right, let's see if anyone had guesses that didn't. Let's see if anybody had guesses that didn't see what I just revealed. You can take a guess.
That's okay. I started the broadcast by choking, so we're all uphill from there. A bunch of dolphins. People are big on the dolphins. Let's see in the comment section on YouTube, orca or dolphin. People are keen on the orca or dolphin. It's a good go-to thing. Let's see.
Makes sense. That is the theme of the program. So yes, that is some orcas. This is actually some transients that stay closer to shore. So that's maybe some of them chatting amongst each other. I've got another one here for you. Let's see if you can figure it out. Any guesses?
Okay. Oh, private chat is exploding. Human. Wow. We got a bunch of human people think we got, a mix or a person. We got orca again, but definitely people are throwing us into the ring.
You know what? There are some great guesses, and some of those sounds you might not think would come from an animal, but that's actually a group of orcas hunting. So some of those more kind of harsh sounds can be some of that echolocation, those clicks from them trying to make a picture of what's around them, as well as talking lots, as many orcas will actually hunt in packs. So maybe hunting for marine mammals or even talking to each other while looking for some salmon. So we do have some killer whales there hunting. And then last one, my friends. All right, any ideas on that last one?
So Joe in our chat says human car, which could be like a mutant hybrid, or it could be a human or a car. I think both. We've got boats. That was my guess. And in YouTube, ship engine. A lot of boat love today.
You know what? You are correct. That is actually just a small boat. So if that's just a small boat, imagine how intense it could be and loud it can be if it was a larger vessel. And that's a big challenge for these whales. OceanWise and other organizations with us have actually been looking at how these sounds might affect these whales and dolphins. And what we see is, if you look in this yellow box, that's kind of the range of sounds that these whales and dolphins use to communicate and hunt and find food. If you take a look at the bottom at the orange, a lot of ships and other human activities also are in that range. And that means it's going to mess with their hearing and what they can do. It's going to make it really hard to rest. Who here likes to sleep in a really noisy place? I mean, some people might be really good at falling asleep and taking a nap anywhere, but it can be hard for some of us. That's not a good way to find food either. That's really disruptive. One really amazing thing that we can do, and if you live along the coast of British Columbia or the United States, you can actually download the Whale Report app. It's called Wild Whales. And this is a really amazing thing from our British Columbian Cetacean Sightings Network, where you can actually see, first of all, who a whale is. There's great resources for just learning more about how to ID whales, but also to say, hey, I saw this whale over there. Make sure to tell all the boaters around to slow down so they're not as noisy. And what we found is that through this program, it really does help. There's been actually a lot of different help from different shipping companies and from the Port of Metro Vancouver in telling boats to slow down, and it does reduce the noise a lot. And we're actually having regulations where boats are having to slow down in corridors or areas where it's a really big hunting location for these whales, especially those southern residents that are endangered. So there are amazing things happening from this research and from the citizen science or the help we're getting from people all over. Now, if you don't live along the coast, or maybe you aren't near the water a lot, like Daphne, wait, I can't do that to help. That's totally okay. There's lots of things we can do. Some of them as easy as buying local products or produce when possible. I know that money can be a constraint and for many people, or just the opportunity to get those. So if you have that possibility, try and buy local whenever you can, especially products that aren't getting shipped across the world in big ships that are noisy. That cuts down on noise for them. Even just reusing things, so we're not purchasing as many new items, means that there's less need for those boats to be coming through to bring us new goods. There's a lot of really easy ways to help. I'm sure that you can brainstorm many others. I would like to say a big shout out to Ocean Networks Canada, who let us share some of their sounds today. And if you are looking for some more resources on whales or other ocean animals, you can always check out our education resources and education programs at ocean.org/education. But I would like to say, so fun to connect with you and see all of your figuring out what is what, but I want to know what you want to know about these animals. So let's hear the questions.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Daphne, as always. What a fun presentation. And I love the engagement in the chat live and on YouTube. You guys rock. Again, on YouTube, we've got groups from Michigan, California, Alberta, and beyond. Our live groups are all over North America as well. So it's such a pleasure having you all in today. If you're on YouTube, share those questions in the chat bar and let me know where you're joining from if you haven't already, and we'll take some from you guys. But I want to start with our Smith Smarties joining us in Stratford, Ontario. If you want to unmute your microphones and come on in, you can kick us off with a question. Hi, guys.
Hi, thanks. That was really interesting. We learned a lot. Our class had been reading about the Great Garbage Patch and pollution with plastics in the ocean. So we're wondering if that was part of the problem with the killer whales.
That's a really good question. And a big problem is, yes, these animals can get tangled in some of that. They could ingest it. We do find, unfortunately, a lot of whales that do have garbage, especially plastic bags in their stomachs, unfortunately. But a big issue is that plastic can actually release chemicals into the water. And that adds to those contaminants and pollution that can get into their food source. And since orcas or killer whales are actually at the top of their food chain in a lot of areas, that means they've accumulated a lot of those pollutants. And they can even pass that from mother to baby through their milk. So that's a big challenge for these animals. Great question.
Neat question to kick us off, guys. Speaking of top of the food chain, and I mean, you addressed this a little bit in the presentation, but killer whales have been seen to hunt great white sharks and blue whales. So like sort of the people's iconic top ocean predator and the largest animal ever to exist. They're pretty awesome. I really encourage all our groups, when you're done this program, look up an orca skull. It is the most awesome thing ever. It's the most awesome skull in the history of nature. It's better than any dinosaurs. Yeah.
Well, you know what? I actually don't have a full skull here today.
But partial.
But I do have the jaw of a killer whale. So hopefully my light adjusts here. But this is actually from a younger one. So this is actually pretty small.
Yeah. So
hard to believe. But they do have some amazing teeth. And they even, I don't know if it'll show up, but they do have a bit of a hollow section in their jaw, which is usually filled with kind of like a fatty tissue that helps amplify sounds. Kind of like if you're trying to shout really loud. So sounds get louder as it goes to their eardrum. Pretty cool.
Daphne, you win the record for best prop just off screen in any of our programs this month. So thank you for that. Miss Simon's class joining us at St. Anne's School, also in Ontario. Unmute that microphone. Come on in and go for it.
All right, thank you. Yeah, no, my students were very interested, and they were wondering how long can the orcas live, and specifically the southern populations. What is impacting them? Why are they not growing in population?
Great question. So the first one is they can live between like 30 to upwards of 80 years. The oldest within the southern resident population that I know of at the moment is within Elpod, and she is turning 93 this year. I'm not sure if she has turned 93 yet. So that's very old. But that means that she has lots of daughters and relatives that are looking to her to learn what is safe to eat, where to go for the best food, and things like that. Now, for what is harming those southern resident killer whales, definitely pollution is a big one. The lack of salmon these days. So we do have a lot of closing of fishing in certain areas where these whales are hunting, so that we know that they're getting as much Chinook as we can give them. And that's a big way to help. But there's also the noise pollution that adds on top of that, making it harder to catch that food. So quite a few things.
We've had on Bill Halliday before. He's a scientist with Wildlife Conservation Society of Canada, University of Victoria, and his whole thing is marine acoustics and how much that noise pollution impacts them. So check out Bill Halliday's program on our YouTube channel too as a nice follow-up to this. All right, we're going to go to one of our favorite towns here, Freehold, New Jersey, to Miss Hanlon's class. You guys have a question for us? Come on in. Hi.
Hi. What does a thing on their back do for them?
Oh, are you thinking of the saddle patch or the dorsal fin?
So it was the white spot, right? We were looking at the part that sticks out. She said the part that sticks out.
So the part that sticks out, that big dorsal fin, is going to help them kind of stay balanced in the water. So it's almost like if you think of a rocket having kind of fins that stick out on the side, helps it kind of stay straight. And killer whales go fast and they're quick in the water. So it helps them kind of make sure they're staying upright while they swim. Really good question.
Great question, guys. All right, let's go to Mount Orab, Wisconsin, to Joe, and then we'll take a few questions from our YouTube classes as well. So Joe, come on in.
Hi. What can I do if I don't live near any whales?
Really good question, Joe. You know what? Just by reusing things. So who has containers that they reuse in their lunch and you wash and reuse them? That's a really easy thing to do. And that means you're not purchasing plastic bags that can contribute to garbage or need to be shipped to us across the ocean, creating lots of sound for those killer whales. Something like that, really easy to do, makes a big help. Or buying things more local, even reusing clothing. Clothing gets shipped across the world all the time in big noisy boats. So try and buy used or donate your old clothes for someone else to use.
Fantastic. And you highlighted some of these in the end of the presentation as well. Ocean.org/education, I'll bring that up as a banner on the screen, is actually one of the best resources. If you guys want to learn how to protect wildlife, protect habitats, eat sustainable seafood, all those things, the OceanWise website in general at ocean.org has a lot of resources for you guys. So thanks, Joe, for the question. All right, we get sort of a two-part question by different classes. Miss, who do we got here? There's so many of them. Miss Pritchard's class joining us, and Miss Daly's class wants to know, do people hunt killer whales? Do they eat killer whales? Is that a threat to them, just direct hunting by us?
You know what? Today, that's not necessarily a huge issue. There is still the issue of people collecting some in aquariums. So there are some aquariums that are still doing that in other parts of the world. The Vancouver Aquarium is AZA and CAZA certified, which means that they're not doing that. Vancouver Aquarium was one of the first aquariums in the world to say they were not going to catch wild cetaceans to have in their care. So it is a problem in some areas. It has stopped for mostly, but that was a huge thing around the 50s, 60s, early 70s. They were still collecting animals from the wild. Hopefully now these populations can recover from that.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see how zoos and aquariums have changed their policies over time. And I mean, you mentioned AZA, CAZA. No matter where you are in North America, look for that accreditation. If you go to the zoo's website or aquarium's website, you'll always see that prominently featured. And what it means is that the institution's at the highest standard of animal care. They're not doing practices that are unsustainable with wildlife. They're making sure those animals are really well cared for, healthy, happy, and in general having pretty fantastic lives. So do check out for those anywhere you go on this planet. It's a really great strategy to help conserve wild things. All right, I'm going to take one more question from YouTube, and then we'll go back to our live groups. Mr. Coster's class wants to know, why do killer whales like to stay close to shore?
Great question. And it really depends on the group of killer whales. Like I was saying, there are some that we call the offshore killer whales. They don't like to come near shore, really. They like to eat some of those sharks and other larger animals out more in the deep. But there are some, like the southern residents, that are going to hang around close to shore where there's lots of salmon. So that's a big place where their food is going to be, near shore. Some other killer whales might come closer to shore to hunt for other animals that might live closer, like those seals and sea lions. So a lot of it is based on food, but depends on what you're looking for food, on where you're going to be found. Great question.
It's really fascinating to think about the whole oceans, which are like 70% of the world. And a lot of that isn't really filled with a lot of life. A lot of the things that we find when you see those great images of whales or sharks, or whatever, it's near shore somewhere. It's near a coast, because that's where the nutrients get upwelled. That's where you get a lot of wildlife. That's where you get that whole food chain sort of developing. So great question, guys.
Yeah, I would say also that there's even through the West Coast from the US up into Canada, there's even the whale trail, which is sites that you can actually see whales from shore. Cool. So sometimes they are very, very close looking for food.
If anyone has not had a chance to see a whale in their life, it's one of the most impactful, amazing experiences you'll ever have. So I really encourage you guys, when the world opens up again, get out, go see whales, whether it's from shore or from a boat. It's a really, really special experience. All right, guys, we've got time for a few more questions. So I'm going to go back to our Smith Smarties in Stratford, say that 5 times fast, and come on in.
Hi. One of our questions was, how many babies does a female have in a lifetime, especially one of those ones that you said were 93 years old?
Yeah, you know what? It really depends. They're going to have one baby at a time, and it's going to be usually quite a couple years between, because just like we spend a lot of time raising a child, likely more than 18 years, they're also going to raise that child for quite a bit until they're ready to have another. So usually a couple years for sure. If unfortunately, that baby hasn't survived, they may have one just a few years later, but they still need to recuperate and make sure to eat enough food again that their body's ready. You got to have a lot of food to make another living thing. Good question. And they can have quite a few in their lifetime. So that individual's probably too old to continue having some, but there are many others that have had quite a few.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, Daphne. I like the 1 year, one per year sort of thing, or one per cycle sort of thing. Good to know. No triplet whale babies. Miss Simon's class, come on back in and we'll wrap up with Miss Hanlon in just a minute before we share some links. But go for it, Miss Simon.
All right. So referring back to our question about the southern population, can scientists do anything to increase the salmon so that these orcas can have more food? Is that something that's a possibility?
That's a really good question, and that's one that a lot of organizations, including OceanWise, are trying to tackle. And one of the big things we can do is research salmon more, but also see how important that salmon is for those whales. And that's one of the questions our researchers are looking into. One of the big things that we are doing that is actually being implemented through the government in BC is actually closing certain areas to fishing. So there are certain areas in there where they're hunting a lot that you are not allowed to fish recreationally and commercially for their season, the summer season, when they're eating most of that salmon. So while that salmon run is happening, which is hopefully going to show an improvement in the next few years. And already, actually, the last few years, we are seeing, we saw 3 babies survive in the last 2 years, I believe, and that's pretty amazing. We had a couple born, I think 5 born a few years ago in like 2015, and only I think 2 have survived till now. So there was a bit of a higher mortality rate for them for sure.
Yeah. It's amazing how often just, keeping a habitat stable, not overfishing it for one small period can really make a big impact. Pristine Seas is a major initiative of National Geographic right now to do just this. If you keep those ecosystems intact, if you protect them, it not only protects the wildlife that's there, but it actually increases the yield in fisheries that are nearby. So it's a strategy that a lot of groups are really looking at around the world. And I'm really glad we got that question. So thanks, Ms. Simon. All right, Ms. Hanlon. Miss Hanlon's class, come on in for one last one, and we'll wrap it up from there. Hi, guys.
We actually have 2, if that's okay. 2 quick ones.
Go for it, guys. Yeah.
How many killer whales does it take to kill the strongest shark?
Ooh, you know what? Some of them will hunt together, kind of like a pack of wolves, kind of closing in on an animal to get it. But I would say that a single killer whale could take down a great white shark if it wanted to. And they do eat those great white sharks. So I think that's pretty impressive.
Awesome.
The whale wins.
And Adriana has one.
What do whales do when they feel threatened?
What was that? Sorry, what do whales do when they
feel threatened?
When they feel threatened. You know what? They might show a display of, they might kind of do some tail slaps to kind of try and make some loud noises and scare something away. And they also might charge, kind of like some other animals, even on land, might kind of charge towards you and then stop. Kind of just to say, hey, I don't like that you're here. Please back off. But they also can, kind of show with body language or really just kind of get away. They're fast swimmers. Great question.
Guys. Daphne, this has been so much fun. Time flies and you're having fun as always. And so we're nearing the end of the broadcast. So again, what I want to do is highlight for people, if you guys want to check out more of our broadcasts coming up with OceanWise and others, exploringbytheseat.com is your one-stop shop to do that. We've got our Global Biodiversity Festival coming up in just a week and a bit. And if you want to learn more about the amazing work that OceanWise does, ocean.org, or especially their education page, so much there to keep learning going and to learn how you guys can make sustainable choices. So I really encourage you to do so. Daphne, as you know, at the end of every broadcast, I'm going to bring in our live groups to say a big thank you and farewell. So our Smith Smarties, Miss Simon, Joe, and Miss Hanlon's class, join me in saying a big farewell. Thank you so much, everybody, for such a great